On this episode of the Byron Lazine podcast, I get the pleasure to sit down with Marc Davison, the co-founder of 1000 Watt. He looks at the world very differently than maybe you do when it comes to brand. He's going to blow your mind at the end of this podcast when he talks about what a personal brand is. We talk about his days at Inman, how that company was built, and what the next media company in real estate looks like. Also, how he got into this business is so ironic. I know you're going to love this pod. Yeah, so I mean, it's really fascinating how you got into real estate because I don't think anybody has done it quite like you have. Going from, and I want you to tell that story before we get into all the stuff you work on, right? And so going from an artist, working on artist careers in music, I just have never heard anybody. So tell everybody kind of your story of how you got into real estate, because I've never heard anybody take this particular journey.
Well, yeah. Okay, cool. I was out of New York City, was in a band, performing at all the popular clubs, got signed, put out a single. And I found that touring made me really uncomfortable, being on stage. All of it. Like
the travel too? The
travel was really hard for me. I'm a homebody. I was dating a girl that I was in love with, and this was before Facebook and text messaging, and this is when you're dropping quarters into a phone booth, 4 quarters for every 1 minute.
And the single was on a cassette tape?
And, the single was radio. We were on the radio.
It was just radio?
Yeah, we're on the radio. So we're touring, and, we're opening for bigger bands, or we're the headline act, and, we're coming up. We're another, hip New York City, post-punk, new wave band. And I didn't like it. I loved recording and I loved writing the music, which was what I did. I wrote the music. But I didn't like the touring. I didn't like being on stage. I didn't like after you play a song, everybody applauds. It just felt weird to me. Like, I don't know why that is, actually. I never really quite analyzed my own response to that. But
you might have been the only one in the room that was confused about the applause.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, like the band loved it. I just didn't. I'd rather be in the audience. I was more of a fan of music, or I really wanted to be behind the scenes. My dad was in show business, managing talent. So I quit the group, and married the girl that I was dating. And I'm still with her. So it's been a long, great life with her, 40 plus years. And I got into artist management. I followed my father's footsteps. And when I sold the company, in 98, I moved to California. I was out of New York City. And I was bored, but I was also intrigued by a home inspection that I had on this house that I was going to buy.
This is wild, because I just think
it's
a
really
cool hip band guy would think of real estate as just so maybe below their creative juices.
No, that's the thing.
Not in a bad way, just it's not going to incite me to do my best work,
hear you.
So I'm not going to do it.
No, I hear you. And I was asked that early on, but the thing is, it's not. And this is the greatest thing about real estate. So I get this home inspection, and I had no idea what a home inspection was, but I was fascinated by it. And I was even more fascinated that because I didn't buy the house based on the home inspection, the agent got very upset at the inspector for blowing the deal. And I'm
blowing the deal.
Yeah, blowing the deal. Meanwhile, well, he's watching my back. Shouldn't you
saw it as a saving my ass, and they saw it the other way.
Exactly. So that exact thought was well, this guy saved my ass. How many other people in America find themselves victim to a home inspection report that is unsavory, but an agent who says, buy the house anyway? I had no idea. I probably had the same perception that a lot of people have about realtors back in the day. Kind of like lower end of the customer service, ethical, totem pole. And, we've all read the data. We see how that pulls out. But my mother sold real estate, and I had an affinity for realtors. It was just this one guy. But I liked what happened with this home inspection. So I decided to sign him as talent, because that's what I do. I would go to clubs and find bands and groom them and get them signed to major record deals. So I saw this home inspector who walked around with a screwdriver and a goofy hat and a flashlight, but the way he delivered his home inspection report, I was captivated by it.
Wow.
So I signed him with the idea that I am going to get him to write about defects in a home, like a Q&A, and I'm going to sell that as content to newspapers. I had no idea how, quote unquote, impossible that should be. But I think this is a great lesson in life. Like if you're coming into something, this is why so many realtors who come into real estate and do it for a year or two, like end up doing really, really well because they don't know the rules. So like sky's the limit. They're not bound by what you can and can't do.
That's
you
right.
just do what you do. So I called every editor in America, and I knew how to sell art. I view this as art. His question, his answer. I mean, I edited everything. That's the skill I have. I ended up, over the course of a year, just doing this from my deck overlooking the ocean in California, 400 newspapers and 1,000 websites were paying for this guy's weekly
and this
article.
is just a home inspector.
A home inspector writing a Q&A. It was called Inspectors in the House.
He probably couldn't believe it.
I didn't know whether to believe it or not. To me, it just seemed like...
No, I mean, the inspector, he probably was like,
no,
what is going on?
He was blown away. But turned out he went to UCLA and studied journalism, so the guy knew how to write.
Oh, you found a... So you did identify talent.
Yeah. So like, I always had an eye for talent. And I early on, I worked at Young and Rubicam, so like I have a background in advertising and branding, and that's what I did at my agency. Like I had my business partner was the lawyer, and I was the guy doing all of the branding and the marketing and coming up with, I was really following my dad's footsteps because he was doing that for his clients. So one day I get a phone call from Brad Inman. It's like 1999. It's like, who are you? Because we're a syndicate. We sell content, but you're like everywhere. And we're trying to be everywhere.
Nationally.
I was where he wanted to get. He had a stable of like 13, 14 writers, whatever. So like I flew to San Francisco. I met with them. And I said, I'll just add you to my thing and I'll just sell your stuff with my stuff. And again, I'm just doing this from my balcony in my spare time. And that introduced me to a level of real estate that most people don't know because they don't bother to look. But this went beyond realtor or like your realtor or your experience with your one realtor that may or may not be good. I got to sit at the desk of Inman and talk to brokerages and franchises and tech vendors and all these, because back then in 1999, 2000, if any of your listeners were around back then, licensing content from Inman and putting their content on your website gave your website content, and content was how you gave your site some juice. So I was doing the marketing around it and the branding around it and helping build Inman. And I got to meet a lot of people. And to your point, as exciting as the music business might seem, I found real estate more fascinating because it's, to help a group make a record and tour, and you bring some joy to people's lives, but to help somebody buy a home and put them in this house where they raise their kids and their family or whatever they want to do, like that's even bigger and better. It was a greater benefit to the world. You talk about a better world. Mm-hmm. There's a better world if you can own your house.
Well, and it's clear just on the financial numbers, homeowners versus renters, on how much more wealthy they are. I mean, if you can get more people to own a house, they're just going to be better off for generations.
You can't say that about it. Well, if I buy the latest single from Def Leppard, that's not going to help me.
Or if I get this car payment, geez, my kids are going to be really well off.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but like a house. So hanging around Inman, I started also noticing that there was something lacking from the real estate. There was a few things lacking from the real estate vocabulary. The first thing was, believe it or not, because it's now 2022, but back in 2000, nobody in real estate was talking about the consumer. It was all leads, lead generation, but there was no real empathy around the consumer experience. Nor was there an understanding of like how the consumer actually perceives real estate as an entity, as an industry, or even as a brand. While the term brands and branding was used in real estate, I'm looking at it from like a completely different so a set of eyes, which is how I was mentored around brand building back when I was doing it in the 80s and 90s, which is it's built on, whereas in the real estate world, branding is name recognition, like 1,000 Century 21 for sale signs on lawns in a marketplace. Real estate viewed that as the brand and branding. And I'm like, that's just signage. It's not, if I asked somebody, what does Century 21 mean? They wouldn't know how to answer that. And when I started asking people at these brands, well, what does your brand mean? They couldn't answer it either. They're like, well, we're a real estate company with a lot of realtors. We have market share. Well, that's impressive, but that's not brand. Brand is something else. And so I began to think about, could this industry benefit from actually, would the industry want to delve deeper into like actually building something that they talk about they already have, but not really?
And this is while you're at Inman?
I was thinking about this while I was at Inman. So while I'm at Inman, I would get phone calls from whoever in real estate wanting to talk to somebody at Inman. I always ended up people thought I owned Inman. I became very in front of, because I would go to their conferences and I'd talk to everybody. Oh, you're Marc from Inman. But I didn't even work. I was I was a freelance.
Okay.
I was the agency. So I began to give advice to people. Like, you know what? Content, is good for your website. Sure, you should get that, but it's not going to help your brand.
Yeah.
If you, like, your website doesn't say anything. When I land on your website, it says search for homes. There's no statement. You're not saying anything.
And still, that's still the case today for most, like in the comments right now, is that what your website looks like? I mean, that's what a lot of agents' website looks like right now.
Like 99%, you go to, if your listeners go to your own website, is there a headline that actually says something other than search for homes or, hi, I'm Marc Davison, I want to be your realtor? And I found that to be really like fascinating, that there's so much to say and so much to offer and no one's saying anything. But yet they're all saying the same thing everybody else is saying. So when the Remax website and the Coldwell Banker website and essentially all say the same thing, search for homes, you're all the same.
Becomes commoditized.
Exactly. And there's no branding in that. There's like, how do you brand one penny from another penny? It's just a commodity. So, I started giving free advice, and I started to then go beyond the advice, and I would like maybe wireframe, create a schematic for somebody's website, and I'd write copy. And after talking to them, I would just for free. And I began to think maybe I should actually do this and build an agency. And I was very fortunate. This was my most fortunate thing. The guy that I was working in tandem with at Inman was a guy named Brian Boero, who became sort of my creative counterpart. He and I look different and at times likely sound different because we're different people, but we shared a creative connection that we would bounce things off each other and greater stuff would come out of it as a result. So I started to push the idea of him and I starting something. And that was the genesis of 1000 Watt. We were born in 2007 during that terrible time in real estate, selling something that nobody quite understands. In fact, branding is still not a line item in anybody's P&L.
Selling something that nobody could afford in 2007.
Nobody could afford, nobody understands. And yet there were a few people who at least I guess early on, because I had made such a name for myself I ended up getting invited to speak at lots of conferences because of Inman. Because Brad had gone off and he was doing home gain. And so there was no one at Inman other than me that was really on the phone with everybody. I'm not an email person. That's not my natural inclination. It's still to jump on a phone and converse. So I think people hired us early on because I'd helped them for free in the past and believed in what I could do further as a service. And that was 15 years ago. So, here we are in 2022.
Before we go too deep into the brand conversation because I think you have a take that is going to blow a lot of people's minds.
It's not popular.
Yeah, maybe not, but maybe it's not popular just because I think everybody's heard this take a totally complete way around brand.
Yeah.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, I do want to talk a little bit about Inman because
Wait,
you
before
were
we
there.
do that, can I just
Yeah.
compliment you on your jacket?
You like this?
I really do like it.
I appreciate that.
You know what it reminds me of?
These are my bomber jackets are my go-to. It's just
It reminds me of the very early first, if you look at the Beatles, Meet the Beatles,
really.
they had that collarless. Yep. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's I feel like I'm talking to Ringo or Paul or John.
Hey, it levels me up.
Yeah,
then.
okay, yeah, it's
I
cool.
have like 10 bomber jackets. It's just like what I wear. Building Inman, they used to do the content on websites for brokerages, and then, I mean, were you there when they completely switched over to like what they are now, and what's that whole journey of from that to what they are now?
Inman is what they are now is what they always were.
Okay.
They are a media company. They are they create a lot of content. And so they were that back then. They had writers, they had editors, they were covering stories. Like back then, the main story in real estate was tech innovation. I mean, there was so much tech coming into real estate. I mean, I still remember with great...
Still today, too.
Yeah, but like now it's like you expect it.
Yeah.
But back in 1999, 2000, when I went to the first Inman News, there was like... It was filled with people from Silicon Valley who looked at real estate as a great opportunity to innovate within and interlope within and disintermediate within. And there was a lot of friction around all these outside geniuses who were building things in their, one-bedroom studio apartment in Stanford. I mean, that's like where, Sami and Pete from Trulia came out of. Like all the great early innovation came out of either Seattle or the Bay Area. Yeah. So it was exciting. Like you go to Inman and there were some brokers, but it was mostly like tech and it was journalists from newspapers covering Inman. There was VC there. It was a different audience. But Inman was still Inman, covering topical information as a news source. So every day they had stories that came out, and they're still that today. But they've grown into, they've grown that into a community, and they've harnessed that community into event. I mean, they always did events, but the events were small in scale compared to today. So Inman is a force in nature, I'd say that like Inman has a beat. They have their beat. In the same way that like Rolling Stone has a certain beat in the music business, but it's not the only beat that exists. It's way more other things that Inman is not focused on. And I think Inman has also transformed their audience from like, the Uber tech innovator audience to like they're an agent team and tech, but like they really play to the agent team audience. A lot of agents. Remember when Inman was like, they didn't invite agents to connect. Now then they went to Agent Connect, which took place at a separate building, and now Connect is agents.
It is.
Inman went where the puck went. They followed that particular puck. But there's other pucks being shot in other places in real estate, and I think that there's great opportunity for other concepts and other media ideas to find an audience and find a zone.
To grow the attention to the level that it is today, what was the best like tactical move? Was it getting into all the MLSs, or was it something else? And who made those tactical moves at the time? Was it Brad himself, or was it somebody else in the company that was operating?
Great question. I think Brad's a genius. I think Brad has multiple geniuses, and so all the early great smart moves were Brad's. He was a journalist for, I think, the Washington Post or maybe the Washington Post. I don't remember, but he was a well-known journalist covering real estate. So the guy had cachet, and building a media company in real estate, you end up making a lot of connections. I mean, I learned that, sort of taking over for him. I didn't. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. He's the Steve Jobs of all of it. I'm not going to say I'm not the Tim Cook. I'm just the guy that came in to replace Brad, who would be out there like building momentum and building awareness. But I think a lot of the smart strategic moves was made by Brian, my business partner, and Chris Inman, who was there when Brad went. But I really would give a lot of credit to my business partner, who was really running. He became the president and was running, and it was like selling content. I mean, we sold content to E-Trade, to Ameritrade. We sold content to Yahoo, to Microsoft, but to brokers and franchises and agents. Like everybody was buying a feed that would just populate on your website through some little bit of code. And so by the time I left, Inman was very popular among a percentage, a very, very small but important percentage of real estate people. The average agent selling homes in a small suburb in Kansas City had no idea who Inman is and might still have no idea who Inman is. But there's another echelon of real estate. It's the people that have come here to the Tom Ferry event. They're kind of plugged in to a bigger awareness. They want to know what's happening in national real estate. They're blogging, they're tweeting. They're like early adopters or mid-level adopters. And so that carried Inman's momentum. And, Brad's charisma. He would put this connect together, and it was a 3-day amazing event that you would go to for whatever reason. You wanted to get out of your town and go to San Francisco for 3 days and enjoy winter in the summer. Or you wanted to meet up with people that you were starting to connect with online through social media, or you wanted to see Charlie Rose on stage or Mark Andreessen. These are people I booked. So I was booking talent, like big time names for Connect. So I had a hand in it, I guess, for sure. All humility aside, I know I played a role in helping build Inman to be bigger than life, but it was a combination of a lot of people.
Yeah, very, very
And
cool.
the community, like the agents and the brokers and all the people who are part of it. They were all part of what made Inman Inman.
Yeah. What's the future look like?
It's funny, that was a conversation backstage yesterday because Tom asked that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the answer I wanted to hear. So, okay, so what does the future look like? Are we talking about what future? The future of what?
Well, it's the future of just that particular, if we would even call it a brand before we start the brand conversation.
Okay. Well, the future of media is, most likely.
Yeah, let's go with the general future of media and real estate.
And I can also tap into the future of realtors.
Yeah.
Who's your audience, by the way?
Realtors.
Oh, realtors. Okay. So the future of media is going to be what it already is. We're already in the future. I think George Jetson was born this year. So we really are in my future. As a kid watching Star Trek, we are all using tricorders and communicators, and George Jetson was born in this year. Media is media. Media is going to cover stuff, and the future is going to be dictated by whatever technology and platform enable media to get to its recipient as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So the future of all of this is going to be dictated by how media is conveyed and delivered.
Yeah.
And how we want to customize that delivery.
And so if you were running BAM like you used to run Inman, you'd be looking at delivering that message to how they're receiving it, like you just said, whether that's TikTok or whether that's...
Oh, so your audience knows about BAM.
Of course, the audience is BAM.
All right. I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think you're going where the puck. There's another puck. Inman's puck is fine, but your puck's going there's another puck, and you're chasing after that. Chasing in a good way.
Yeah.
You might even be the guy hitting the puck and sending it forward and then skating up to it and hitting it again. I think it's all about interesting content. Content itself is just a word, but it really defines information, and information needs to be the kind of information an audience at that particular time has interest in. I think you guys are on a cutting edge of interesting information that other media, like if you look at other media, I would, and I like everybody, but I think Risk Media, Real Trends, Inman, they're all chasing a certain type of story, and they're delivering a certain type of story a certain way and information a certain way. It's not the only way, and it's not the only kind of information. And so I think the future is going to be about understanding audience, and your audience may in fact not be the 65-year-old agent that was hip to Inman 20 years ago. Your audience is like maybe a younger, hipper. They want some entertainment. They want content that maybe they can reuse that's going to make them look a certain way that agents didn't have a mindset around, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So I think the future of anything is dictated by audience, by delivery methods, technology, and how you package stuff.
Yeah, and it's still information though. Having the information that people want to repackage or use in the way they want to use it.
I mean, think about in whether you're in New Mexico or you're in South America or you're in Egypt, there's hieroglyphs. That's information. That's content. The platform was a rock.
Yeah.
Or a cave.
Platform was a rock.
But talk about
hard to get an audience on a rock.
But I mean, what's fascinating is, whereas here we are in modern times, you post a tweet, it probably has a 20-minute lifespan.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, these cats, 10,000 years ago were posting content that's still around today.
That's true.
Talk about long tail.
Looking at the long vision.
Yeah. So it's going to be about that. Should content evaporate right away? A lot of content does evaporate right away. Yeah. How many times do you post something and then go look for it and you can't find it?
Right.
On your own,
on your own platform.
On your own feed, because the feed decided what to do with it without your permission. So
that's the most consumable content right now is the stuff that does have a very short shelf life, whether you're talking about, vertical video on TikTok or Instagram or even Facebook Reels right now. And, obviously a tweet has been that way for a long time. But
I do wonder, it's a good thing you mentioned that short shelf life is sort of a modern reality. But if you think about it, content should be evergreen. If you're producing lots of content, it should have a longer lifespan. So I think the future of all of this too is really knowing, and I'm not saying this might be a good segue to brand, but it's just a good segue to how I think maybe a little bit differently, is whereas real estate agents are told to just produce content and push content, I think about is you really need to think about what you're producing and where is the best place for it to be pushed.
Absolutely.
And not pushed.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're creating content and you're putting it on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It should be on something else. I don't know, you're creating.
Don't put a TikTok video on LinkedIn. It's going to be confusing.
That's my point. Or don't put 5 reasons why you should move to my city on Instagram.
Yeah.
That belongs on Google. That belongs on YouTube. Yeah. That should be around for a while.
Yeah. That should be in your blog or targeting the newsletter of the folks who are out of state who have shown interest through some other, however you got their information.
So in my mind, part of what's been sort of a blessing, but mostly a curse for me, is always that kind of okay, so everybody's going this way, but what if we all went that way? What would that world be like? But so I'm thinking about this just now, but imagine a time in the future where when you post something, you're posting it into a dashboard that reads it and says, okay, I understand what that post is. That post belongs on YouTube. So you don't have to think about it.
Oh, you just make the content and it spits it to the right platform?
And based upon the content, your dashboard analyzes the content and decides, okay, this belongs here.
Or maybe it'll play well on Instagram Reels and TikTok, but not any of the other platforms, right?
It might
aggregate 2 of them.
Or it'll see that, it's playing. So you made this long form video and it's playing really well on YouTube. I'm your dashboard. I'm going to take a snippet of that, cut it, edit it, and put a 6-second version of it on TikTok.
Yeah.
We have to now all manually do that. So, okay, I'm thinking, in the future, because you asked me, like, what's the future? Maybe the future is AI kind of tech that can.
Are you texting the editing team right now and letting them know
we're
they're all?
out of a job.
No, but like, nobody's ever going to be out of a job because, like, somebody's got to create AI. Somebody's got to make robots.
We have the best clips team in real estate. We just pump out clips faster than anybody. I was in Tom's office, and he was on one of our shows, and I was on one of his shows. And Courtney, his social media manager.
Oh yeah.
Tom Ferris.
Yeah.
And so, about an hour after we leave his studio, we're still hanging out in the office.
He's a video guy.
Who's that?
Is that Courtney?
No, Courtney. She's the manager of all his social media handles, right?
Okay, I'm sure I know her.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of he's got
the video
guy.
production guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no. So about an hour later, we already have one of the clips up from our show because it was a news show. So, anyways, she's like, "What the heck?" I'm like, "That's what we do at BAM. We produce clips faster than anybody. The one snippet that you're talking about that AI could maybe accomplish someday.
Either an AI can do it, or you guys use TripIt?
No.
Trip is the greatest app. Well, there's two great apps.
Note it.
DMinder and TripIt. But TripIt, when you book an airline and you get the email confirmation, you just forward it to TripIt, and TripIt takes all the information and pulls out only the most important shit that you need. Oh, can I say that on your podcast?
You're
Okay.
fine.
I normally don't curse that much, but like it just came out. So like when you go to TripIt, when you the day you're traveling, you just open your TripIt app. It has the day, and it has your airline and the flight, what time you need to board, has the hotel. Like you just book your.
Oh, from the whole trip, whether it's car, hotel.
You just forward your email confirmation. So you rent a car. It's all.
So if you had the car, the hotel, and the plane, all three emails get forwarded into this one place, and it just puts it all together.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's my readout.
It smushes it together for you.
Now, in the beginning, I think they were manually doing that, but then they built an AI, and it's just because who remembers? I booked my travel 2-3 months in advance, and then I forget about it.
Yeah.
So like
you
it's
guys are
like
at the same hotel, Bobby. You might bump into Mark.
Oh, you're at the Residence Inn. Isn't that elevator super slow?
Oh, when I went to go check in, I couldn't believe it. I actually started doing circles in the lobby because I'm like, it has to be broken.
It just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait.
Like 5 minutes. It's unbelievable.
So
maybe that's part of the problem with like TikTok. We want this instant hit, right? And I'm just, but it was really long.
Not to digress, but like I was on the 13th floor and I needed to get to the conference today. And I'm waiting maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes.
I know. It's
I'm impatient.
Unbelievable.
I went down. I just took the stairs.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's healthy anyway. But so maybe that is the future where because the future is all about not having to think. But in replacement of thinking, we need to create. We're all being turned into creators. And we're like Jason Pantana today was talking about Jasper.
Shout out to Jason.
Yeah, shout out to Jason. One of his things is like you can put a post or a headline into Jasper, and Jasper will turn it into a post.
Mm-hmm.
He'll write more content around it. That's kind of scary because if I'm an agent in Sacramento and you're an agent in Sacramento and we take the same bit of data, it's going to create the same post. So like you and
essentially.
But like the bottom line is it's taking the thinking out of it and it's turning us into creators. So we're all becoming content creators. So maybe this is part of the future of media.
Do you feel overwhelmed and too busy building your real estate business right now to do things you know you should be doing, like posting on social media, doing clips like we're doing on Broke Agent Media, these short little reels and TikToks every single day to keep up with the content machine that you need to be keeping up with? Or maybe it's the transactions that are wasting all your time so you're not actually lead generating and doing the income producing activities that you know are going to help you make the most amount of money in the investments that you want into your future. This is why I have used virtual assistants and use them today with VirtueDesk to help scale both of my companies. See, I wouldn't be able to make all of these clips and do all of these other things I'm doing without the help of somebody taking off these non-income producing activities that need to get done to be of great service to our clients. So at least have the conversation. Click the link, have the conversation with VirtueDesk. In fact, you can just start interviewing people without really any commitment at all. So at least start interviewing, seeing if there's somebody that is a fit for you, your values, your team, that can add and take away all of the things that you're doing right now. Have the conversation today. You will not regret it. Yeah, I'm not in love with AI content from the Jasper perspective. It's certainly not like what we do at BAM. We still believe it. We have great writers.
I'm
and-
100% with you.
Yeah.
there.
So I don't. Now, maybe for somebody who doesn't have a team of people, and chop it up, and they're focused on selling. I need to sell 50 homes this year because that's going to get me to the next step in my business.
Yeah.
It might help them get the newsletter out on a timely basis so that they can keep in touch with their database. And so there might be, a use there. I just think if you're creating content that's actually going to be useful to a lot of people, that's probably not.
I agree. I think if you're going to become a content creator, then become a content creator.
Yeah.
Here's a good use of Jasper. Use it as a crutch, as a tool, as a learning aid. So I would do this.
Might make you a better writer.
Yeah. So look at what Jasper creates. And don't be lazy and just then, okay, I'm going to post that.
Yeah.
Because that's not in your voice. This is going to get into branding now because you're a human being. You're known by your audience for having a personality, a tone, voice. You use certain words. Jasper doesn't know you. So if you turn your content you create and Jasper is your output, then you're just putting it's like auto-tune in music. All these auto-tune singers sound the same. You sound like auto-tune. It's still important. Take the extra moment. So use Jasper to learn, okay, here's how I can extrapolate a paragraph or two from a headline and then just rewrite it. Take 5 minutes. It's not the end of the world, but that's important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You could look at it and then just like you do with a tweet, right? You see a great tweet and then you subtweet it and put your context on
I
top.
do that. I will never retweet just to retweet.
Yeah.
I will always write, I'll add my, we were talking about this yesterday.
We did a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's really important to just have an opinion.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about it? And you don't have to create it. You can be a great sharer.
Well, sometimes those retweets with the just maybe 3 words
Totally.
added in will get more attention, will get shared more times, retweeted more times than the original tweet itself. I mean, how many times do you see that a day? It happens all the time.
Dude, if you think about what a thought leader is, I've thought about that a lot over the years in real estate. That term gets bandied about. But there are some thought leaders that have original thought that can read an article and extrapolate out of that article a whole strategy around it of their own. But then there's somebody who might read that and go, wow, that was a great breakdown. And then they share that and say, this is a great breakdown. And you know what? If you're a voice of reason for people and you put your stamp of approval on that, like movie reviewers.
Yeah.
I
mean, they're just saying 5-star or 10 or whatever they're
this is a
saying.
good movie. Here's why I like it. They didn't write the movie.
That's the example.
That whole Siskel Ebert. I think one of them was a frustrated screenwriter that never got to write scripts. But he can review and he was sharing. So I think the future is also not being so lazy and not relying so heavily on tech to do everything for you.
Yeah.
You still have to be the human being in it so that you're not replaced.
Right.
You're not going to be replaced by tech. You're going to be replaced by somebody who does what you do better than you.
And most people would say, well, if you're doing that, if you're just letting the tech do it, you have no chance. And here's the buzzword that everybody is used to hearing.
Yeah.
You're going to have no chance of building a personal brand if tech is doing it for you.
So you're going
and you're going to say that. Well, I'll let you say.
I'm going to say.
I'm going to let you say it because I just believe that the majority of, certainly in a day and age where a lot of agents have heard, I'll use not Jason Pantana's name, but a bigger name, Gary Vaynerchuk, talk about personal brand being the most important thing that, and whether it's he's at a realtor conference,
I know,
or any type of conference that you can invest your time and energy in. So why should or shouldn't an agent invest their time, energy, and resources in building a personal brand?
I'm trying to think where I want to come at this. So I'll lay this statement down. I think the term personal brand is a spun up fabrication that's gotten hyped up because it sounds good. Because we all know what brand is. We all grew up with like the Mattel brand or the Nestle brand. Nintendo brand. Like the word brand and brands, I have not met anybody that doesn't have affinity for some brand that defines them. You know, even if somebody goes, I don't know, I'm not into brands. Well, do you golf? Yes. What kind of? Oh, okay. So you use Titleist. Well, then you're a brand aficionado. Like that's the brand you identify with.
Yeah.
So when you say to somebody, well, you can be a brand, like your person, that's like saying to somebody, you're gorgeous. I love you. It makes you feel good. And Gary Vaynerchuk is a master at like saying stuff that makes people feel good.
It's the best.
One of the best.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff with him.
But what you just said, making people feel good, that's a talent that is exceptional in his wheelhouse.
Oh my God.
The empathy and all the,
charm. He can, and like his delivery, like he's a New Yorker. I get it. I'm a New Yorker. Like we tend to connect with people the way we break stuff down and talk straight up. We can't help ourselves and just say what we feel. And I think that is a powerful thing when you're, especially on a large stage, because like people can see your humanity in that. And
know that you're not BSing. Like I think that comes across really well.
There's something in New York City, growing up in New York City, where you're one of 10 million people and you're fighting for everything. So you really got to stand your ground and stand up for yourself and represent. And, a lot of great salespeople come out. I mean, he's a sales guy. He sold wine. And he speaks from the cuff. It's not scripted. New Yorkers aren't scripted. But getting back to this personal brand thing, it's a fabrication. There's really no such thing. Even the people that you look to and say, oh, well, Kim Kardashian's a personal brand. No, she's not.
That would be an example that I think everybody, 99%,
no, she's a brand.
Would say she's a personal brand.
She's a brand. She is a brand. And, well, what's the difference? Because the Kim Kardashian that you see is not who Kim Kardashian is. That's a manifestation. That is architected.
I was asked a question. I had to do, my friends, he's got a big finance job in New York City, and they want him to go through this personal development right now for maybe the next level. He's a leader. He's become a partner, and he's doing very well.
Congrats to him.
Yeah, congrats. And so he needed friends, family, few people to have a conversation with this professional development group that he's going through this thing. And one of the questions the lady asked me on a Zoom was, with, growing up with Chris and your friendship and all this stuff, do you think he acts any differently in the workplace than he does outside of the workplace when you guys are on vacation or when you're seeing each other back in your hometown or whatever?
Yeah.
And I said, my answer to her was, everybody acts differently at work than they do with a high school friend, than they do with their wife at dinner, than they do with their husband taking a walk, than they do with their dog in the backyard. Everybody in the world does that. And that was my answer to her.
Now you're entering my force field. That if you're trying to build a personal brand, what even Gary Vaynerchuk has probably offered this, but I've heard lots of people in real estate talk about this. They always say, create more content, push more content, be out there, build your personal brand. That's not building your brand. That's just being out there and creating marketing and creating business. So you're really building your business. They're conflating brand and business. Brand is part of a business, but in the way and the context by which it's being used, they're different. If you're trying to build a personal brand, think about the investment, the capital, the infrastructure you need to actually manifest in a real world a personal brand, to where you as an individual have meaning well beyond the industry that you're in or the service you provide. So like Elizabeth Taylor, she's an actress. She's got a brand, Elizabeth Taylor. It's perfume. It's this and that. So like the essence of Elizabeth has been baked into a storyline that's become bigger than her. It's you wear this stuff, you smell like you smell like Hollywood. You smell like success. There's Elizabeth Taylor, who's been divorced many times, dysfunctional.
And you're saying that's the personal person.
Yeah, the personal person is a dysfunctional individual who can't believe she ever made it as an actress. But the brand,
which is the same name, Elizabeth Taylor.
But it's something built around a completely different storyline.
Yeah. Because the person buying the perfume may not even know this other story about, because I don't know the stories of divorce or whatever, of the personal life
she's told
of
it
the personal
many
person.
times.
Yeah, and I'm sure probably many of the users of the products do.
Yeah, yeah.
But somebody else that just knows that there is a brand Elizabeth Taylor, like myself, that, I'm not into it or whatever, doesn't know any of this other stuff.
No, they just know that the branding is tied to a different storyline. The branding is, if you wear this perfume, you're going to be Elizabeth Taylor.
What's the Kim Kardashian brand? Because that's a very modern example.
Yeah, but like, if you were at Kim's home and she woke up in the morning, she'd probably come out of her bedroom wearing floppy slippers and a fuzzy bathrobe and maybe be in a bad mood, and just be herself.
Yeah.
The brand it's a bigger than life fashion, cosmetic,
perfection.
Product, perfection. She's buttoned up. But it's like, so we can argue the semantic over whether it's a personal brand or a brand.
And what you're saying is just take the word personal out of it.
Take the word personal off. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're trying to build a personal brand, and this is the science of branding, the reason why there are powerful brands in the world is because the brands radiate. I call it pheromones. So maybe you know what that means, who's listening, and if not, they radiate chemicals that certain people pick up and they resonate with. So like, why do you wear bomber jackets? Maybe you wear a certain brand of bomber jacket. Why do you wear that? Because you see yourself in that product. And and it's not by accident. The makers of that know you. They've dissected you. They know their customer. They've done persona work. They've done customer journey work. Any brand, Tesla knows its customer. Nike knows.
I also have one of those.
Nike knows its.
2 for 2.
Okay, but like, no, I'm just naming big brands.
Yeah.
But Apple, we all walk around with these $1,000 phones that we could do the same exact thing on a $200 phone. But
no, we couldn't. We can't get rid of those green bubbles on a $200.
You don't get rid of this because you identify with Apple.
Yeah.
By using an Apple, you say something about yourself.
It's been an interview question of mine.
Oh, really?
So I go through my interview questions. I have a big team of probably
Like what
65 people
technology
in
do you
Connecticut,
use?
and then we have the BAM team. So one of the last questions always used to be, and then I started doing it in the beginning because I was like, you know what? If you don't want to get the first one right, what's the point of answering the rest of them? And the question is, blue bubbles or green bubbles?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. And people should know what that means immediately.
You should know what that means immediately. And if you say green bubbles, this probably just isn't the right fit.
Yeah.
And people are like, what the heck? Why would that even matter? It says something about, to me, and the way we operate, just the way you're going to use technology in the work environment, the way you're going to see it, the way you're going to certainly create content. Like if I had a content creator, a video producer, or a graphic designer in an interview say green bubbles, it's an automatic no. You can't even come back from that. I mean, maybe if you're like signing up to be in the Connecticut real estate team to be a real estate agent and say green bubbles, like, all right, I see a lot of potential. Go buy an iPhone and
then
you
come
can start
back
on Monday. And people they've had to do that.
This is fascinating because to afford this technology, you need to earn more. And so
so people could take that perspective and be like, well, that's just a really douchey thing to say.
No, but you're trying to create a culture.
Yeah.
And a culture of like-minded. Brands are cultures. Like people who wear this or people who drive a certain car. Like, what is a car? A car is a chunk of metal with 4 rubber tires to take you from point A to point B. Why would anybody in the world throw down $100,000 to buy a Range Rover that breaks down and costs a fortune every time it does, just to get to point A and point B. And the reason is because to them, that chunk of metal, they identify.
And a
with
lot
it.
of people, I mean, they're a nice looking car. I'm not into cars, but a lot of people identify there.
Over the years, I grew up in New York, so like I didn't have a car. But when I moved to California, I was faced with that. I got to like learn how to drive and get a car. And so I didn't just get any car. I got a car that I identified with. It was a Land Rover. And I was like spent a fortune fixing that stupid thing. But like I saw myself in a Land Rover. And you say that, I see myself in that. What I'm trying to say is that's brand. Brands manufacture that. So if you call yourself a personal brand, what you're really taking on the challenge is trying to manifest something that other people can see themselves in. And it's very hard for me to see myself in you when all of your marketing and branding is all about you. That's where I struggle across my entire like spectrum of thinking. So I can't get past that.
As opposed to somebody saying, I want to be them, it should be, I want to listen to them, which would be more of, I want to listen to that brand. Or it
goes a little deeper.
Okay.
It's that brand understands me. That brand perceives me. That brand is creating things that I identify with. Like I always tell.
And I want to be around it more.
I want to be around it more because it makes me a better version of me.
Yeah.
Like it really comes down to that. How many young people who really can't afford it but go and lease a BMW or live in a condo building that's a little bit above their means?
Bobby grew up in Long Island, so that's why he just was snickering over there with the BMW comment.
A BMW.
Well, because like it's aspirational, but like it's who they want to be.
Yeah.
Brands understand that. If you're a personal brand, if you're using the word brand, that says that you understand that motivation that people have, and you are manufacturing and you're communicating things. It means you understand your customer and what motivates them, and you're delivering information and things to them that they read and go, yeah, I know that they sell real estate. So does everybody else sell real estate. But they're radiating something. I see myself within their world. And so like, I'm not saying that you can't be a brand and be called the Jim Beam brand or the Marc Davison brand. You could name it after you, although I think you're making your life harder. I think if you name it a word, and that word's more of an empty vessel that you can build, it just makes it easier to build. Because I can believe, it's why consumers bought into Zillow. Because it was easy to create a bridge between my need as a consumer and what you offer Zillow than Realtor.com, because for me to cross the bridge into whatever I had to walk through realtors. And people have a thing about realtors. They had to first embrace the idea of a realtor to love Realtor.com.
So up front, it feels like I'm not included.
It's about realtors. Zillow was about me. It was an empty vessel. So I always advise my clients, if you really have to name and we do a lot of brand naming, if you have to name your brand after your name, we'll do the best we can building meaning around it, but it's so much easier to just create a word.
Basically, that's probably the best analogy for people to get it. Realtor.com versus Zillow.
Because it's the first time I ever used that, by the way.
It's probably the best analogy because I've heard this. I've heard you and Jason Bantana go back and forth on this topic. So I had a little bit of context before, you just shared it with the audience. That's the best example.
Well, thank you.
Because
you brought that out of me.
Realtor.com is essentially a personal brand of realtors.
I can't get past that as a consumer. I have to buy into realtors to then buy into what Realtor.com is selling me. And the whole time I'm thinking, you're just trying to sell me a realtor. And most people don't like realtors.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because they should. And they love their realtor, but they don't love realtors.
or they just initially have the, nope, I'm all set.
Yeah,
reaction.
I'm about me and you're about that. And like, this is, like I could have called my company Davison Agency or the Davison Boero Agency. But then that means that you have to like buy your way into me. And like now I run the risk of you liking me. Whereas if I'm 1,000 watt, you're like, oh, that's a cool sounding word. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And like I thought about it. I thought about the name. Like what's the story about 1,000 watt? What do I radiate through that name that people will pick up on and will resonate with? And it's the early start of building brand. So like I'm saying, take the word, you said it, take the word personal off. It's harder. It is 20,000 times harder to build a personal brand and then to manage that personal brand, because then you have to manage your every move as a person.
To emulate that.
You got to live up to the ideal that you're setting as a brand. Just be a brand. Create this sort of like external asset called my brand and manage that.
And I used the name earlier, Gary Vaynerchuk. He'd probably agree with everything you just said.
He would agree with
because it's what he's done. Gary V.
Yeah, V Media or Vaynerchuk Media.
Well, VaynerMedia, but even
VaynerMedia.
Even his handles for what he calls a personal brand goes under Gary V. But he's Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. He created a persona brand.
Yeah.
So like, but if you think about Gary V you can say he's a personal brand, but what is his brand? Like his brand, it's convoluted. He's Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a celebrity. He's a famous person. And if there is a brand to Gary V, think about the monumental effort and money and hard work it took for him to build that. Like a realtor.
A lot of hard work.
Can't. I bet you, and I don't know your audience, but I think I might understand the weight that you guys might feel on your shoulders to just create so much content day in, day out, when you just really got into this business to sell real estate. And you want to do right by people, and you want to help people sell their home, and you want to help other people buy houses. And now you're saddled with this massive chore of creating content to build your personal brand. You didn't even get into this business to do that. And I struggle with the thought leaders that are pushing you to do the thing you're not even maybe wired to do or built to do. And you're told that that's the only way you're going to succeed. Well, the truth is, no, it's not. There are other ways to succeed that would be a lot more comfortable to you. And if you want to build a brand around your business, trust me when I tell you this, because I'm also a businessman. A brand is 10 times more valuable than a personal brand.
It's more saleable.
Yeah, because if I buy Bill Smith Realtor.
I need Bill.
What's that?
I need Bill if I'm going to buy that.
I need Bill. Like without Bill, then what do I have? And that's the thing. Without Bill, what do I have? And if you can't answer, oh, I got great agents, I got market share. That's not brand. Yeah. Everybody can say that. Yeah. So like you got to build meaning. So just so I don't leave your audience hanging, what is that? How do I create that connectivity, or how do I create that thing about me that other people see themselves in? That's science. There's not a lot of, it's some creativity, but it's a scientific method. And, it really requires you, to stop and think, who's your primary customer? Who is actually the bulk of is it buyers? Is it sellers? Is it people under a certain age, over a certain age? Is it a net worth customer? Are the people who buy you need to figure out who your primary is and begin to create personas around that primary. So there's, Susie the buyer. There's Bill the seller. Like you have to create those things out of real people, but you create, like, what do they aspire to? What motivates them? What are their greatest fears? What is their journey? Like if you stop and think about the journey of a consumer across the threshold of real estate from beginning to end, and you really understand what Susie goes through all the way through, what opens up for you is a world of messaging and content for Susie that feels a lot more personal. Because when you publish that, Susie will say, oh my God, he reads my mind. No, you are reading. Our brands that we love do read our minds. When they put out new stuff, it's like, wow, I want that. Why do you want that? Because you've been wanting that.
Well, with the bomber jacket, I literally feel like bomber jacket tailors are making it for my body type specifically. Like they just have
that.
my body type in mind. right? And so I hate to do this to wrap, but in the comments,
We're rapping.
in the comments right now, if you want a part 2, because I know I want a part 2 conversation with you.
I'd be happy to
in
do
the
a part 2.
future. Like in the comments, just let us know if you'd like a part 2 to this conversation. But on the wrapping up the personal brand, and you said it in there, and I said it and you said it, lifting that word out might actually alleviate the anxiety and the pressure to create for agents so that they can speak to their
and
community.
to make it about you all the time.
Yeah.
You're not that interesting that you could be that interesting all the time.
That's one that a lot of people will disagree with. Too,
But
it's,
I know a lot of people do disagree with me, but like I've been very successful creating brands my whole life.
Yeah.
Because I know this, that like what people are more interested, you're interesting, but I'm more interested in me.
Yeah.
And this is my point.
Of course.
Where you're making content about you, like Jason even said this on stage, don't make content where you're not in the camera. Like I disagree with that.
Yeah.
It shouldn't always be about you. Make it about me.
I just gave advice to somebody today. She's a great artist. And she's like, I put up static images, but I got to start doing more video. I'm like, but people love your drawings. She's like, yeah, I know, but it's all about video. I said, so just video the drawing and do a voiceover.
Oh my
of
God,
it.
yeah.
I said, and that's going to take off because it's soothing, and you can basically tell the story on the voiceover while they're seeing the writing visually
While
and do
you're
it up
doing
close. And I said, that is going to be so much different than anything anybody's doing, and it's going to feed into this short form content.
I love that.
And it's
That's
really going
bright.
to work. Yeah.
People are fascinated by how art is created.
Yeah.
And so like everything I'm saying is not meant to be negative or attack. We're all here trying to do a good job and help people. But when you ask most realtors, why'd you get into this business? Very few of them say to get rich. Most people say to help people.
Yeah.
And I would then go, why is that important? And the answer that they gave me, and is always a little different. And I'm like, that's the brand right there. What you just said to me is your worldview. That's your belief system. Build your company aura around that belief system, because that's what people, what you just said, that's important to people too. Like to get a good, fair deal or to whatever their belief system is. There are lots of people who have that same belief system. Promote that, communicate that. Every time you create content, it should tie into that belief and that consistency of all your messaging and communication. That is what manifests brand. Apple, from the box to the software to the hardware,
Just to the way the wrap comes off the
the whole
box
thing. It's
from
the whole.
start.
It's a consistent experience across.
Yeah.
If you're just throwing content up with no rhyme or reason, how in the world can you build brand when brand is all about consistency and a through line? So can I make this offer?
Yeah.
Most of your agents don't need my services, might not even want to pay for my services, which is great because I want to just, if you have any questions, just email me. I answer everybody. There's no commitment to buy anything, to do anything.
Very cool.
But I don't like to set up this reality where like now I'm making you think and I'm challenge your, like you said, what you've heard for 10 years and then leave you with like, now what do I do? You got a question, you want to show me something. I'm at a stage in my life where like doing this and paying it forward like means everything. So like that's our brand.
Very cool.
Okay, cool.
So we'll put actually the email in the show notes, and you should definitely connect with 1000 Watt everywhere they are online.
We have a
because
newsletter. It's
a
free
cool
newsletter called The Dose. It's like a hit of cool stuff every week. And we have a membership program where you can join and get access to a ton of consumer data that we create that really informs you a lot more about your customer than you might know. Because we're doing the surveys and the polls. So I can give you all that
Yeah,
information.
no, I would definitely
What
connect.
an honor.
and
It's been
a pleasure, and
Same here.
in the comments if you want part 2, because I know I want it.
well, if you guys wanted, well, where are you located?
I'm in
Florida.
Well, I'm in Connecticut and Florida. I'm back and forth. So
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out, and you're everywhere, and
I'm
you're
everywhere
in
and
Portland a lot, but I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I'll be there.
right.
Who knows?
Bam.
Bam.